Tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome everybody. My name's Jeff Short, Director of PhotoForum, and welcome to the first of our live video interviews, and thanks to Creative New Zealand for helping us make it happen. Hopefully there'll be some more of them if we get it right. Tonight our interviewer is Andy Spain, a photographer based in Wellington, and he'll be talking to our special guest tonight, Poppy Lekner. Poppy is a multimedia artist who uses photography, but doesn't generally use a camera. And she says her methodology involves the merging of scientific approach and the unsteady mark making of the hand. So that's quite intriguing. And if any of you have questions that you'd like Andy to put to Poppy, please send them through to me using the chat function in Zoom. To me, Jeffrey Short, and I will forward them to Andy if I think they make sense. And he'll incorporate those into the session towards the end of the session. I'm going to try and make myself invisible now. I'll hand over to Andy and Poppy. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff, and thanks, Mary, for both of you helping put this all together and for asking me to present a few videos talking to different photographers. Poppy, welcome. Can you hear me all right?
I can.
Good. Here's my gushing introduction. I first met Poppy, was it 2 or 3 years ago? We did the photo book masterclass, I think 3 years ago maybe.
Yeah.
In Massey in Wellington, and I remember you sort of not being extremely confident with showing your work, and then slowly pulling out all these images and putting them all up on a big whiteboard or on a big wall or something, and there was just more and more and more and more and more and more went up, and it was this incredible sea of colour and form that was just incredible, and everyone was kind of bowled over by suddenly seeing what one stage was these tiny little Polaroids suddenly became this massive hit of form, basically. And then you backed it up with these great stories about, it's your dad's scientific instruments that you'd used, and the wider sort of abstract experimentation and your careful consideration of the photography and art context with all your sort of underpinning conceptual ideas. Your work creates and then recreates constantly, and you have fun with that image making process without there being a sense of something finished necessarily. It's not like you say, here are these 5 finished images. It's more of a sense of working towards something until it's used up, and then you start on the next thing, which I said was like nearer to painting or something with someone kind of redoing the same thing, and also very sort of scientific, that we'll talk about later, that you're like really experimenting almost in a scientific way to see what you can produce, rather than to think there's an end goal that you want to get to. It's more a case of seeing what you can achieve with what you're using. And I did a really pretentious sentence here, and I'm not sure whether it makes any sense or whether it's almost looking for a truth through an indecisive moment. I don't know. You can ponder that one and write a thesis on it or something. And it's no surprise that your repetitive imagery and you're making marks on the photographic image won you the Parkin Prize a few weeks back with your work / where you made a repeated / on an A4 piece of paper on a typewriter, and it became a cumulative effect of that same mark again and again and again. And it's very obvious, I hope, by the next half an hour or so, that piece was very much part of your artistic investigation, ongoing artistic investigation. I'm going on a bit too much, but a friend of mine, yeah, it's easier for you. A friend of mine said, when she heard that you'd won, she contacted me and said, "Oh, now wait for the backlash," which really surprised me. And I thought, well, you know, in the UK they always have the Turner Prize. There's always a backlash about, oh, look at this, what a load of pretentious modern art. You know, it's not worth it. But then you also had some backlash with accusations of plagiarism. So let's get that out of the way before we start back at the beginning. How did you deal with those all those comments and the whole heady moment of winning such a prestigious award?
Yeah. Hi, Andy. Hi, everyone. Thanks for
Yeah.
coming today. Cheers. So yeah, it was just incredibly surprising to get in the finals in the first place. I was just like, I'd made this work. It felt like a really private little experiment, and I was going to send in a cameraless photograph. I laid them all out, and I thought, I just had heaps. You know what I've got, Andy. I've got heaps of stuff. So I was laying it all out, and just thought maybe it's not quite right for the packet. And then I'd been doing these little experiments. Can you see that? I don't know. Yeah. So I'd been doing these little experiments, but before that I'd been doing lots and lots of writing, sort of recollections. My mum, about my sort of lots of bits and bobs that popped into my mind, and recollecting times with my grandmother, and then trying to figure out how they might work with photographs. And because I've got a whole series of little photographs, so little photograms that I was putting together with bits of writing in relation. So there were artifacts from my grandmother, and then recollections of my grandmother. And then I just kind of was fiddling around and thought I really liked the marks that the typewriter made, as well as the act of writing with it. And so I thought, I'm going to give this a shot for the competition. And I really like the way Parkin is quite, people can take it quite literally, what drawing is. And so, yeah, I just thought, well, it's kind of my vision of a drawing. It's kind of meditative. It's kind of a landscape. It's kind of writing. And so when I submitted it, I really didn't expect to get in the finals, and I absolutely did not expect to win the Parkin Prize. And so it was an incredible shock and incredible sort of surreal experience getting the call. Rebecca, who's the PR person for the Parkin, rang me and said, "Are you sitting down?" And I was like, oh, this is not good news, because my mum's not been well. So I thought it was something to do with my mum not being well.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but anyway, so it was not bad news, but it was still like, what? I mean, really? You're giving me the prize for this? So yeah, it felt very, very bizarre. I'm still not really sure. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me, but I mean, art doesn't make a lot of sense either. So that was the high, and then there was a sort of a warning that there was going to be a lot of press interest, and then the backlash. So the backlash was kind of a roller coaster. It was yeah, there was all kinds of backlash. There was, this is not a drawing, and then somebody found something similar in America, and then somebody found something early from concrete art, somebody using a typewriter. But I always knew that my intention was with good faith. I'd kind of come there by myself, and I definitely had not seen any of the other artworks. So, well, I think it's quite a natural thing. And I was talking to my dad, who's a theoretical physicist, and he'd just been reading a book about this, about innovation, and about how these things, they kind of are in the collective subconscious, and things kind of come out, and yeah, we're all kind of thinking about the same things, even though maybe we're not all making art about it. So I think it's just a natural thing that we're all thinking beings, human sentient beings. And yeah, so, but I also think that the intent was different, and that's what Charlotte Davey was saying from Te Papa, and the judge was saying that, yeah, the intention was different, and I think it's different than the other work. So yeah, that's all.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I was so pleased for you. I was so pleased for you because, you know, your work is so experimental constantly. You're always experimenting. So it was really nice to feel like that was recognised in a way, and it might have been recognised in a way surprising to you because it wasn't your Polaroids or your camera-less photography, but still, you know, along that same path. And it's interesting. I see you were doing those poems and recollections and bits of writing alongside your images on a typewriter. Why? I mean, was that again because you're so much about the, you know, the action, the form of print on paper and that kind of thing? Or haven't you got a computer, Poppy?
No, what am I looking through now? What is this stuff? No, I've got, I don't know. It's just, yeah, I think we may touch on this later. The actual physical stuff of old mechanisms for doing things are just so rewarding. Like you're physically doing something, you're physically hitting something, it's making a mark, you're seeing a piece of paper, ink is on the paper. Yeah, I'm not sure that's the question, but
yeah. But no,
yeah,
we can talk on that more later on. So going back decades and decades and decades, Facebook tells me Facebook told me that we had a mutual friend in the UK, which we eventually realised that you probably went to school in the same year in the same school as my wife at Wellington Girls. Neither knew each other. Yeah, small world. I was just wanting to know, you know, those early informative days. What were you interested in creative stuff? You know, what was going on in terms of your formative creative education, I suppose?
Yeah, I guess I always loved making stuff and just really loved things like Play School, which was a TV show in New Zealand. I don't know if you had something similar in England, but
we invented it.
What's that?
We invented it.
Oh right, sorry. But they always had these little segments where they'd take stuff and show you how to do stuff, and I just remember being obsessed with one particular thing where they had a piece of plasticine and they'd put it under a piece of paper, and you could make a hole in the paper with the plasticine. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but it was something about the object, something about learning how an object could work. And I'd always made cards for everyone for their birthdays and just loved making and doing stuff. And then my dad's from Czech Republic, and his mum had a big interest in art and was so I had a big cultural side of like a different culture to be interested in, and the art side as well. So my grandmother was a major art influence. And then also we went overseas quite a few times because my dad's a theoretical physicist and on sabbatical, and just living in different places and seeing different cultures, seeing different lights, like different seasons, different plants, different just I think I've always been a little bit I love observing things and I love looking at things, and I'm quite sensitive and not necessarily that outgoing. So just looking and taking notice of different stuff was quite cool as a child, but also it was difficult being a shy kid, being in a different environment. So yeah. And then growing up, more and more stuff, I really became interested in art at school. And there was only 2 of us in my final year of high school doing art, even though there was 200 people in the year. So there was only 2 of us, and the other person is also an artist. It's Erica, a woman called Erica Duffy, who does tape art. I don't know if you've seen her work, but so both of us have become artists, which is really cool. Yeah, she does really cool stuff. She's had stuff on the side of Te Papa with tape that she draws the outlines of stuff. And yeah, it took me a bit longer to get to it. I think she went more direct. I went via science and yeah, came there eventually. But yeah.
I've just brought up some of the images you sent of those early influences, photographic, artistic and otherwise. So maybe, and I think you said some of these I should have put in further along, but maybe if you could talk about some of them. I assume This Amazing Equation is your dad and his work.
Yeah, so there was the foreign language and the kind of incomprehensible scientific language that Dad was talking in. I mean, he wasn't talking to us, but we knew he was communicating in a foreign language, a scientific language. It's all mathematics, and so yeah, his focus is light, which is kind of interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, so theoretical physics of light. So he's got all these
Oh,
equations that relate to reflection and refraction and transmission of light waves, and yeah, it's quite.
how much of that do you sort of understand and
Probably about as much as you do. Can you look at that?
Okay. Yeah.
I did do first year physics, but that's about, yeah. He was forever hopeful I'd be a physicist and kind of we would be able to do research together, but that didn't quite take off. Yeah.
That was kind of my next question, because did you still study 1 year at Sciences at university then, or did you?
No, I did I did physiology and biochemistry, so I didn't do physics right through, but
And then you taught computer studies, so you obviously were going in a quite scientific direction in some respects.
yeah, I kind of before I only did computer studies for a short period of time. I did public health for a while, and then did the Millennium. Everyone was interested in computers at that time. Thought I'd retrain as a computer person, and ended up realizing that there was no way on earth I'd be able to live in an office. So I did teaching, and then I did computing, and then I did art after that. So yeah. Kind of. I'm not your direct route kind of girl. So yeah.
But there's always that crossover both within you and in your family life then, with science and art.
Yeah.
It's just really interesting to know how they meld together, because they're traditionally seen obviously as oppositional, but your artistic practice feels really scientific.
Yeah.
Was there a question there? How do they meld together, Poppy?
So yeah, I think they are kind of weirdly related. I've asked my dad to do collaborations before. This is sort of a side, but yeah, but he's just a total purist about science being something that's not something that you'd have any control over in a artistic kind of way. You wouldn't be you'd be creative, but in a different kind of way. So, but I think from my point of view, I've got a kind of a subjective science that I do. It's all about whatever I'm feeling from the object, and that sounds really kooky, but
no, that's a lovely way of putting it. Subjective science. It's really nice. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. So yeah, so that's kind of my point of view. Dad's would be more analytical, maybe, yeah, founded in mathematics, but I do love mathematics as well, and I love chemistry and biology and being in nature and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think
we've skipped over some of your kind of influences that you sent me, but you it's just amazing how I don't know, you often when you ask for someone's influences or early interest when it's a photographer, then they feel like, oh, that's a surprise, or that's interesting how you melded that and that and that together. But yours seems so on message. I mean, even looking at this could be your Parkin Prize, entry kind of thing.
Copy it, by the way.
Yeah.
Maybe I did. Yeah. Yeah.
So do you want to talk about some of these? Because I know you said you've got this book behind you, I think, on the shelf.
Oh yeah, I've got this book here. So just the amazing things you encounter over the internet, Instagram. I just found this woman called Alyssa Minahan. She's from America. I bought 2 of her books. She just publishes them at home, but just on her own printer, and just really beautiful. So some of them are sun prints, Some of them are darkroom prints, but I just love it, and I'm aspiring to do some kind of book project myself, but I haven't quite made it yet. Or that was the edition thing that fell out. But yeah, and I've got another one from her where the sungram's not been fixed. It's in another box up here, but it's so every time you open it, you're eroding the lifetime of that sun print because it's not been.
Oh wow! Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, so that's quite
I love
cool.
the touch. Yeah, what is happening with your book idea? Because that's why we did the masterclass 3 years ago.
What's happening with your book idea?
Yeah, I've done two photo book masterclasses. I still haven't got a book.
Me too. We'll get there. Yeah.
Yeah. And then other influences again that seem so directly related to your practice. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I just love Len Lai's photograms and film works. They're just incredible, just innovative, and I love the colour. I think I've got a brochure, like a pamphlet from the exhibition at Govett Brewster, but just beautiful. And yeah, and the Bauhaus work and all these, this I think this was like a major influence. Before I'd even started doing photography, I went to an exhibition at the Sargent. I don't know if I've given you this.
Yeah, I think you have.
Yeah, I've got, you've got heaps of stuff. Sorry, I've given you too much. Yeah, so just incredible, innovative work with using the camera as something that is not just a seeing thing, but a tool in another way as well. And yeah, I don't know. I think it sort of takes away from direct. It's not so direct. I don't really know how to explain it. I remember this exhibition being incredibly powerful at the time, and I was trying to look up when I saw it, but it feels like it was the 90s sometime. I couldn't find it on the Sargent website at all, but it must have been a touring exhibition. So yeah, just incredibly powerful and yeah, thought-provoking work in that book. So yeah, definitely love that.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting, isn't it? Your how you put all these different things together over the years and come up with what you've come up with. I mean, this was shockingly I hadn't even heard of. Is it Kawara?
Yeah, Onkawara.
Great, yeah, fantastic stuff. Well, it's again.
He's an incredible guy, and actually, you know how we were talking about. I think we were talking about Mickey, who's on at Sanderson at the moment. She also is influenced by his work and his I Read book, his I Read series. So he did a whole lot of series related to I saw, I got up. So he just sent a telegram of where in the time and the date that he got up, and he would send a postcard to all these different people. So it was kind of a record of his existence, and these date paintings that he's got here are he would do these paintings on a single day, and if they weren't completed by midnight, he'd throw them away. But they were all done by hand; they weren't stenciled or anything, and he'd do them in the language of the country he was staying in. So and if it was a non-English speaking country, he'd put it in Esperanto. So
sorry, yeah, just to get down.
Right. Keep me moving. But just I remember seeing them at the Govett Brewster too, and just being really transported by what a date in time could be. Like, it's such a universal experience, and you think back to how it's a universal, but it's subjective, and it's all of those things that are kind of human existence crunched down into very simple form. So yeah, I really love his work.
I'm losing track of my questions now, but in a good way, because it means it's flowing. But I feel like one of the things that I said I wanted to say is how a lot of my work using traditional photography, both commercially and in personal photography series, is very much about trying to tell a truth, but I'm obviously just using different photographic tropes to try and you know, tell that truth, where your imagery, where it is just not just, where it is putting objects onto paper, has that incredible indexical strength and truth, because we know that that object was on that paper and that the light exposed it, and that is it there in front of us. It's not, it hasn't had, you know, 10 further levels of transmission through the photographic, you know, SD card to the computer to wherever, you know, to be posted on Instagram, to be viewed. You know, it's just there. You can see this tactile, beautiful object in front of you that has that relationship. And I was just wanting, you know, again, to sort of find out something about, where do you see that truth? You know, is that important to you? I mean, is it just a process? Am I over analyzing, you know, that aspect of it?
Well, I think it started off as being incredibly important, that the relationship of the object to the photosensitive paper and my interaction with it, whether it was passive or involving my, you know, I was doing something, because I was making the works about my grandmother's books. So I had, I inherited a whole lot of books when my grandmother died, and she was incredibly important to me, you know, as a grandmother and as a cultural, she just connected me with my Czech ancestry. And so all these books were, most of them were in Czech, so I couldn't speak Czech. So the way I could relate was through the object and through the image. And so this is one of, I don't know if you can see can you see that? Can you see? So this is one of the books.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've put up two of the photograms I made, but they were, so yeah, these books are kind of my grandmother. They embody my grandmother. Each one kind of adds up to my grandmother for me. So
I'm sorry, what were the books? What are the books?
So the books are all books that she brought from the Czech Republic when they immigrated after the Second World War. So they were yeah, they had to leave. Well, they should really have left before the Second World War happened, because my grandfather was Czech, so my dad had to go into hiding. So it was quite full on. But anyway, yeah, so I've got these books, and I inherited them, and wanted to make something with the books. And so these images came from making contact prints from very long exposures. I'd also had very small children, so I was limited in terms of what I could do in the darkroom or leaving the house. So I could make these, well, originally I didn't have the small children, but then I had the children afterwards. So yeah, it kind of fed into a process that I was enabled to do after I had little kids. But yeah, so basically making contact prints out of the books, and sort of being able to connect with my grandmother through the books, and then making my own.
How did that physically work, making contact prints from the book?
So it's not a complicated thing, but it was, yeah, so putting photosensitive paper under a page, and then,
wow.
So in some cases it was, yeah, see the one on the, with the woman, that's, the reason there's two images is because it's a double-sided page, so it kind of ended up with a double imprint. But the other one of the house, which is a very bizarre architecture house near Prague, that came of also the looseness of not putting a flat contact print, so it was kind of semi in contact. That's why there's the blurring. And yeah, for me it was a way of connecting with my grandmother post her death, and yeah, and a way of connecting with someone whose books and artifacts were all in a different language as well. So it was, yeah, it was a nice way to be able to use photography in that way.
They're just gorgeous, aren't they? They're just so, it's that whole thing about truth again, and authenticity. So they feel so personal. They seem like precious, you know, memento mori type of things that you just want to hold tight because they mean so much to you. So they're so special.
Yeah, that's the kind of tricky stuff about my work, is that because it's a one-to-one, I normally make one print. Occasionally I might make prints of a print, but for me the actual print is the interaction. So, and yeah, so multiples becomes a dilution of that, or is something else. It's a different thing.
Which is one day why your work will be so expensive.
I don't think so, but yeah.
All unique. All unique.
Thank you.
And then you moved on to the Horizons Meta-Scientific Explorations with cameraless photography.
Yeah, so that was, yeah, that was related to a whole set of other artifacts. So there were various scientific things that kind of drew my attention, and I was thinking, I've done the flat contact print book version, and now I'm interested in 3D objects, and I started making stuff at home, putting them into dark bags, and then taking them to the darkroom to fix later. So these are sun grains, so they have very long exposures because they are black and white photographic paper. But if you expose it just to sun and do a really long exposure, you get this beautiful mauve coloration. And yeah, just I really love the softness. So I started experimenting with things that were interesting to me, and then artifacts that were related to my family. So I don't know if you can see in the background, there's a vitrine there from my grandmother. I had another board that was a sewing board from my mum. My dad had, because of his physics connection, had a whole lot of really cool optics, lab experiment stuff. And I just went, I love prisms. So there were prisms, and there was springs, and there was Petri dishes and all kinds of lenses. And I just played with the light, and I called it Meta-Scientific Explorations with Cameraless Photography, because the meta-scientific was kind of my subjective science, again, sort of subjective play and understanding objects through play. So yeah, that's kind of where that exhibition came from. There was way more than what was in the exhibition, but yeah, it kind of ended up about 20 plus images in Toipuaneke. And I think it was really nice because it was just, there's such quiet images with such a big white space that it lent itself to being able to view them quietly.
I was just thinking that's the name of your book, isn't it? Subjective Science.
I think you've named it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, they're just absolutely amazing images. We've had a question coming in from Mary. It's a very good question, obviously, because it's Mary.
Yeah.
Interested to know where does your drive to experiment come from, and why were you drawn to photography as opposed to other mediums to explore your ideas? I know you've sort of spread out a bit to other mediums over the years, but obviously photography is the thing. The cameraless photography is the thing that you're doing most.
That's a really good question. I'm not sure why.
It's a good question, but is it as good as all the other questions you've had before from me?
I know, and your questions are very good questions. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know that photography is the best answer to answering like interaction with objects. I think actually being with objects in whatever way you want is really powerful. I mean, it sounds really kooky. I'm saying that kooky again, but I think whatever you want to do with an object and however you want to explore that, there's so many ways. There's just like unlimited ways of exploring things. So yeah, it's subjective, and I don't know how photography became a thing. I guess it just, one thing led to another thing and then another thing, and just loved the excitement of what comes next, what the questions that don't get answered, and then another object presents itself, and you go, oh, that's really cool, and then you take that in a direction, and then other things come out of that. There's just so much luck and so much of the world that involves itself in your practice, and it's just kind of, who knows? I don't know.
You given a camera, for example, or something like that as a kid, or was there some early photography link along the line?
I had a Polaroid. I got given a Polaroid really early. I remember a really horrible stiff photo with really bad lighting. You know how easy it is to do a really bad Polaroid photo with at nighttime like indoors. Yeah, it was a really bad stiff photo. But yeah, we had a Rolleiflex when I was growing up, and I remember using the light meter and trying to get it in the middle so that I'd take a good exposure. And yeah, I don't know. The camera somehow gets in the way of it all. I don't know, for me.
That's so interesting, isn't it? I totally get you. I mean, that's a really good point, I think.
Well, if you're doing objects, if you're doing portraits, I mean, it's a different, if you're doing landscape.
But then exactly. But then, but even then, maybe sometimes I've seen beautiful landscapes where people put a piece of photographic paper in the tree, amongst the trees, or by water, and let the moon expose it, and it's just ethereal kind of end result, which is fantastic. But it's that thing where one could photograph those scientific instruments with very even lighting on a perfect neutral background, with a 10:8 camera with the highest resolution, and get an incredible accurate rendition that shows you so well that glass pipette or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But there's something about your work where that thing has actually touched the paper, which again just makes it feel so honest and authentic. Subjective.
Thanks. I think there's super value. There's value to both, isn't there? So yeah. But I definitely love a really early work of Talbot's that's just gauze on a piece of photosensitive paper, and just the simple mesh is, I think it's there. Yeah, there is something wonderful about knowing that object has been there, and same with Anna Atkins' work on the left there. So you somehow got a direct relationship to the photographer. I mean, you've got a direct relationship to the photographer when you're looking at someone's camera-based image as well. But somehow the physical object, the physical contact with the paper somehow makes it. I don't know. I'm talking rubbish now, but anyway.
It feels like I don't know. I suppose people talk a lot about death and photography, and how it's capturing that moment in time that's frozen forever. And I feel like with yours being a single image, where we have a very close relationship with the fact that you put something on it for a certain amount of time, it feels I don't know, even more about that moment being so precious and disappearing. But I'll stop, because far better questions are coming in from other people now. Okay. And we're getting to the point where we should be slowly wrapping up. Where does this is another question from Abby, asking, have you experienced creative fatigue? And if you have, how did you overcome it?
Creative fatigue.
You strike me as someone who probably hasn't, interestingly.
I've experienced the threat of the white piece of paper, like with art making. So I had that post art school, I think until I kind of made stuff, and then the logic led to more and more. So I think you just trust in yourself more and more as you start making. So I'd encourage Abby to just make stuff, and and follow her own interests. I don't know you, Abby, but I think if you just kind of follow your interests, there's a logic that develops, and then you know that logic. And even so, dry spells maybe involve reading some stuff, doing something different, walking, just maybe going to galleries. There's just so many things, and maybe not getting hung up on it, and then just finding something that creates a spark. My dad's spoken about this before with his theoretical physics as well, is that you need a spark to fuel a project. It doesn't necessarily come out of a mediocre feeling about something. It comes out of a, wow, that's really cool, and I'm interested in that. And then you kind of, everything flows from that once you start exploring it. But if you don't start, that's also a peril. If you don't and sort of take that first step, because you can overthink it, and overthinking stuff's not very useful. So yeah,
I agree. It's just about doing it, isn't it, really? And
yeah,
it doesn't matter whether it ends up something great or ends up nothing. It's just starting and seeing where it takes you.
Yeah, definitely agree. Yeah.
I'm going to wrap it up with that's great sort of final question about what you're working on at the moment. And I was also wondering whether you've been, inspired by the whole COVID lockdown malarkey and all that kind of thing.
So what am I working on at the moment? I've just done, I've been working on these for ages, and I really love them. It's antique paper and little mini photograms that I made in the dark room with objects, and then I'm making lots of colourful. I haven't shown you lots of stuff, Andy. I'm feeling like I've talked about the
stuff.
Moving along. So lots of. Oh, where did I put the box? Lots of these. The lighting is terrible, isn't it?
No, it's not bad. It's not bad.
Can you see it? So lots of Agnes Martin inspired landscape, kind of internal landscapes, horizon lines. Just
mini Rothkos,
many personal.
How are they made?
Oh yeah, so those are in the dark room with with a Polaroid camera or Instax camera, and just different light sources and different objects. So yeah, combination of stuff. Yeah, and I've also made some. This is another teeny tiny one. So I don't know if you can see that one too. That's another one that I made during lockdown. So I turned this room that I'm in now into a dark room without making it light proof. So at night time I'd come down after the kids, because the kids took over every space and my husband took over every other space. So it was only after everyone went to bed that I could do stuff. So yeah, but so I came down here and I just use torches or whatever kind of light source I wanted to use, and made these. Or actually, I used some moonlight too. So when there was a full moon, I was doing moon-related prints. So I found that was quite cool, doing stuff. Another indexical relationship, that you're in sort of a relationship with the moon and the earth and the object, and quite cool. Having that relationship at the time as well. So
exactly, it's it feels like you almost want to write down the time and the date on those to remind yourself that was that feeling, that emotion of lockdown. It makes a welcome change from lots of pictures of people by their windows or front doors or whatever.
Yeah, such an intense time, eh? Yeah.
We both frozen. Oh, no, that's better. We've come back.
Have we? Okay. Have we covered everything? Are people asking any other questions, or?
No, I think that's it. Unless there's any other questions that kind of suddenly pop in the next few seconds, I'm going to say thank you very much to Poppy Lekner Parking Prize winner 2020.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I hope we covered everything.
Yes, thank you. You back now, Jeff?
I am. I thought I'd say thank you both. That was a really lovely conversation, and it was a privilege to sort of be a voyeur and be able to just sit in on it, and listen and see the work and hear about some of the processes behind it. It was really fascinating, and I just really want to thank you, Poppy, and thank you, Andy. It's great stuff, and I think it's a great start to PhotoForum's new initiative. Thanks to Creative New Zealand for seeding some funding to make it happen. This is our we got some funding to experiment in contactless video interviews. So this is our experiment. And for everybody watching, thanks for coming. And we will be posting the video on the website. I'll go away. On the PhotoForum website soon.
I'll edit that out, Jeff.
Turn my cell phone off. I forgot about.
I'm calling you. I'm calling you.
Okay. Thanks everybody. That was great.